Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be talking about graphing sine and cosine functions with a vertical shift. So you're going to need your notes, 3 colored pencils, and a calculator. Alright, let's get started. First thing we're going to talk about is our transformations that we've already learned. So this doesn't have to go in your notes, we're just going to do a little review. Now if we look at number 1 here, we have that plus 2. We know that plus 2 on the end means that we're going to go up 2. If we look at number 2 over here, we have a negative 5 at the end. That means we're going to go down 5. Now if we look at number 3, we have a negative 1 inside of the parentheses. These ones are the ones we have to think about as opposites. So if it's negative, we're going to go to the right 1. And last but not least, number 4, we have a plus 3, which means we're going to go to the left 3. And we have a plus 4, which means we're going to go up 4. So we're going to be using these today and tomorrow when we're talking about vertical and horizontal shift. Alright, now you'll need that bright yellow piece of paper that goes into your notes. This is where we're going to fill everything in here. We have certain steps to following when we're graphing sine and cosine functions with vertical shifts. Step 1, we need to determine the amplitude, which we've done. When we're going to do that, all we have to do is take the absolute value of A. So it's always going to be positive, so it'll come out as A. Next, we need to determine the period. In order to find that, we're going to always take 2 pi divided by B. After we do that, we're going to determine the increments. When we determine our increments, we're going to take our period divided by 4. Step 4, we're going to determine our vertical shift. Now this is the new part. When we do our vertical shift, it's going to be the K. It's going to be what's added or subtracted behind the X value. Okay? Now once we determine all of these things, we need to draw a horizontal line. So Y equals K. This is called the midline. It's going to be in the middle of the graph. So we're going to use this information, steps 1 through 4, to determine our periods of growth, labeling of our axes. Alright, we're going to do 2 examples. Here's example number 1, so make sure you get this all in your notes, please. We start out here, find our amplitude like we have been. So we're going to take the absolute value of 3, which equals 3. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to find our period. To do that, we always take 2 pi divided by what is ever in front of x. So we're dividing this by 2. So we're left with pi. Once we're done here, we need to determine our increments. Our increments are determined by taking our period, which was pi, divided by 4. So it's just going to be left as pi over 4. Now we're going to do our vertical shift. Our vertical shift is whatever's added or subtracted here at the end. So it's a negative 2, so we're going to go down 2. Now that we have all 4 of those things figured out, we can now start our graph. Now we know we're going to go down 2, so I'm going to put my x-axis a little bit higher than I have been. Put my y-axis, need to do my increments. There's going to be 4 increments on each side, ladies and gentlemen. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 on this side. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we can label them. We're counting by pi over 4. So we have pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, and 4 pi over 4. Whatever we do to the right, we're going to do the exact same thing to the left. So I have pi over 4, negative 2 pi over 4, negative 3 pi over 4, and negative 4 pi over 4. Now we can start going. But this is a little bit different, ladies and gentlemen. We're not going to start with the amplitude. First thing we have to start with now is our vertical shift. Has to be done first. So our vertical shift is going to make us go up or down. In this case, we're going down 2. So we start at our center, and I'm going to go down 2. I'm going to draw a dotted line in a different color. I'm using red. You guys want to use a different color when you are drawing your vertical shift. Once we have our vertical shift, now we're going to come back with a new color. So I'm going to use blue, and we're going to do our amplitude. Our amplitude is 3. Now, this is where it starts to be different. Instead of starting at the center, we're starting at our midline, our vertical shift. So right here on the red, this is where we're starting. And I need to go up 3. So I go -1, 0, 1. That's going to be 3 for me. So I go all the way up to 1. Now from here, I also need to go down 3. So I'm going to go -3, -4, -5. Make sure you label it. Once we have all this down, now we're going to graph. We're working with sine. Sine always starts in the center. So I'm going to start here at the center. My center now, ladies and gentlemen, is at my midline, my -2. That's where I'm starting, my red line. From here, I'm going to go up. Now make sure, ladies and gentlemen, we go up all the way to the amplitude, so all the way to 1. Now we're going to come back down to the middle, so our midline. And then we're going to go all the way down to the amplitude at -5. And then we're going to come back up to our midline, so we're stopping and starting in the same spot. Connect our points here. Put your arrow at the end. Now we need to do the same thing to the left, except for now instead of going up, I'm going to go down. So I go down to -5. Right on my amplitude. Remember, we have to go to it and touch it. I'm going to go back up to -2 pi over 4. Then I'm going to go all the way to the top of my amplitude. So back to my blue dotted line. And then I'm going to finish back at my midline. 1, 2, 3, 4 points. 5 if you count the one we started with. We started and stopped at the same point. Now we can connect our points together. Put our arrow at the end. Now our graph is done. But we can't forget we have to do domain and range. Our domain, remember, ladies and gentlemen, is always going to be all real numbers. Our range is going to be determined by our amplitude, so the 1 and the -5. We know that y has to be less than or equal to 1, and y has to be greater than or equal to -5, because we can never pass our amplitude points. You can write it like this, or if you prefer, you can write it like this. All right, moving on to our last example. Here we go. We're going to graph y equals negative cosine 4x plus 1. So we're going to be thinking a little bit more on this one, ladies and gentlemen. Our amplitude is what comes in front of our cosine. In this case, it's -1. So we take the absolute value of -1, which is just 1. Now we're going to do the period. In order to find our period, we're going to use whatever in front of x. So we're using this 4. So it's going to be 2 pi divided by 4, which is just pi over 2. Once we have that, I need to find my increment. Now, since pi over 2 is a fraction, instead of dividing by 4, I'm going to multiply by 1/4. It means the same thing. 1/4 times pi over 2, multiply straight across, I'm going to get pi over 8. So this is what I'm going to be counting by, pi over 8. Now for our vertical shift, that's determined by what's added or subtracted on the end. So I'm going to be plus 1, that means I'm going to go up 1. Now that I have all of this information, I am going to create my graph. Now I know that I'm going up, so now my x-axis I'm going to make a little bit lower than usual. Create my y-axis. I'm going to be counting by pi over 8, 4 on each side. So I have pi over 8, 2 pi over 8, 3 pi over 8, 4 pi over 8. Now when I go to the left, it's just going to be the same thing but negative. So I have negative pi over 8, negative 2 pi over 8, negative 3 pi over 8, and negative 4 pi over 8. Once I have all this done, vertical shift comes first. I went up 1, so in a different color, mine's going to be red every time I go up 1. Make sure you label it. Once that's done, now I can go and I'm going to do my amplitude. My amplitude is telling me I have to go up 1 and down 1 from my midline. So I'm starting at 1. So if I go up 1, I'm going to be at 2. If I go down 1, I'm going to be at 0. So it's going to be right on top of my x-axis. Make sure you label it still. Now that that's all done, we can start. But here's the kicker, ladies and gentlemen. It's cosine. But now instead of just being regular cosine, it has a negative in front of it. Whenever there's a negative in front of it when we're doing cosine, instead of starting high, we're going to start low. So this one's going to start right here at 0, 0, because that's the lowest point in my graph. Now I only have one choice. I have to go up. So I'm going to go up to my midline at 1. Then I'm going to go all the way to the top. So I'm going to be at 2. I'm going to come back down. I'm going to be at my midline. And then I'm going to stop where I started, so I'm going to be back here at 0. 1, 2, 3, 4 points. We started and stopped in the same spot, so now we can create our graph. Make sure we go back up at the end, put an arrow on it. Now from here, we're going to go up, so we go to my midline at 1. Then I go all the way to the top of my amplitude at 2. Back down to my midline. And now I'm going to end the same place I started on the bottom, as low as I can go. Stopped and started in the same spot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. Connect my dots. Put an arrow on the end. Now we have to do, our graph is done, domain and range. Domain, always, all real numbers. Range, determined by my amplitude. So we're going to work with 2 and 0. Y has to be less than or equal to 2, and y has to be greater than or equal to 0. You can write it like that, or if you wish, you can write it like this, 0 to 2. Now I have one more note that you guys need to make sure you have written down. We're working with a negative sign in front of our sine or cosine. These are the rules. Sine, you have to start in the middle still. But when you go to the right, you're going to go down instead of up. And when you go to the left, you're going to go up. So we're switching the way we go on our graph. And just like the example we just did, if we do cosine, we just start low instead of high. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that is all I have for you today. I hope you have a wonderful, fabulous day, and I'll be seeing you later. Bye!